Welcome to the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum live panel session number 48 on the statistics and insights from the 2024 IBM Cost of a Data Breach report. It's good to step back once in a while and observe what's happening in the cybersecurity industry and how the current trends may be impacting our security awareness training programs and our human risk management programs. So today, our panel of security experts is going to look at the most recent IBM Cost of a Data Breach report. And we've got a representative from IBM, Sanju Cherian, who is here to help us interpret some of that report. So welcome, everybody. I'm Scott Wright, the CEO and Chief Engagement Officer at ClickArmor. And the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum is an open collaboration group for anyone who's passionate about security awareness and human risk management. And the CSAF series is brought to you by ClickArmor, which is the Employee Cyber Confidence Builder. If you're looking for a more engaging employee experience and a more effective way to train staff, we'd love to talk to you, and we'll share more about ClickArmor in a minute. But let's get started. Welcome to all our newcomers in the session, and welcome back if you've been with us before. And before we introduce the panelists for today, just a reminder, we'd like all the attendees in the live session to enter into the chat where you're joining us from today. That helps us understand our international participation and also gives you a bit of practice in entering things into the chat. So we love to have interactivity here. So as usual, let's meet our awesome group of panelists for our discussion on the IBM Cost of a Data Breach report. So Ryan, would you be able to do some intros for us?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us as always. On the panel today, we've got Thea. Thea is a behavioral neuroscientist with over 10 years of experience in studying how the biology of our brains can influence our behavior. In her current role as Director of Research for Praxis Security Labs, Thea now works on applying her experience to cybersecurity scenarios surrounding the human element. Welcome back, Thea. Next, we have Erin. Erin has been working in the security awareness field for 5 years. She has helped build programs for companies ranging from 1,200 to 500,000, and we now know who. Erin has a true passion for maintaining the human connection in all things security and awareness. Great to have you back, Erin. And joining us today, special welcome to Sanju. He is a senior IT professional with over 20 years of experience in technology risk management, information security, and IT consulting. He currently works at IBM Canada cybersecurity organization as the delivery portfolio management leader and strategy and risk service line leader. I would love to see your business card. Welcome, Sanju. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to the conversations. I'm Ryan from ClickArmor, and I'll hand it back over to you, Scott.
Thanks, Ryan. Just get my screen sharing going here again. It says my screen sharing has failed. Well, that's something new I haven't seen before. So let me try again. Okay. Here we are. So just to give a little bit of context for people who may not have joined us before, we record these sessions live and we transcribe them. We have a YouTube channel where we post our recorded sessions, and we also distill that transcription into a quarterly report, which is really useful for CISOs and other managers to understand the things that are topical in the security awareness and human risk management industries. And we have a community called the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum community that anybody is welcome to join and collaborate on. So at this point, I'm going to just dive into our topic for today. And in a moment, I'll ask Sanju to just give him a little bit more of a context on his role and his perspective on the report. So as you may know, IBM has been publishing the Cost of a Data Breach report. This is, I think, the 19th year that the report's been published, and it's sort of an industry, milestone or benchmark that everybody refers to, especially when you're talking about, justifying security programs in a lot of cases. But the report itself covers a lot of areas in terms of specifically the cost, but also common factors that lead to breaches, as well as the what are the factors that drive certain parts of the cost, which is really interesting. And it breaks things down by other factors like geography, industry, etc. And in this report, I think you'll see some good insights into emerging technology and its impacts on the cost of data breaches. So I'm going to turn it over to Sanju to as I said, introduce yourself, Sanju, and your role and perspective on the report, and then we'll walk through a few of the highlights from the report in the next few slides.
Thank you, Scott, and thanks, Ryan. I wish I had a business card for myself because we did away with that many years ago. So, yeah, thanks, and it's great to be with all of you and and folks who are listening in. We IBM have been partnering with Ponemon Institute on the cost of a data breach report for 19 years now, and it has been used by clients, vendors, competitors, or even individuals to understand what's going on in the cybersecurity space and what's new and kicking in terms of awareness in this space and what to do about it, right? I work with clients and my team work with clients day in and day out in managing security services for them. So we have clients that come to us and say, hey, listen, we know what is to be done basically in terms of cybersecurity, but with all the new technology that's out there, what can we do with the information that is spread across within our organization? The biggest impact of data on the organizations and what to do with the data is what's causing all of this, right? At the end of the day, it's cost of a data breach. So this year's report is important in a couple of ways, and we can go to the next slide. Scott,
sure.
It is absolutely important to keep in mind that the cost of a data breach is increasing. So data is being breached. There is absolutely increase in the cost of addressing those breaches, right? So the data shows that, and companies are paying more to address how those breaches can be remediated, what to do about those breaches, and how to put in place remediation actions, right? So that is actually increasing. There's a bit of sweet story in this report this time around, is that if you look at how effective are companies and organizations in addressing those breaches and remediating those breaches, there is savings that we are seeing from companies that are actually adopting AI-driven technology and remediation actions. So while the cost of the data breach is increasing, you can also see that those companies that have adopted to new technology and have welcomed the use of generative AI and other means of addressing these issues are seeing savings in terms of how much they're spending. Okay, so I'd say it's like a bittersweet spot in terms of how the data or the underlying data is telling us a story. So that's one of the most important things to keep in mind. If you move to the next slide, I think it's important to note that there are, certain sectors within the industry where we are seeing considerable amount of breach. Okay, there is, this one. And it's important to note that healthcare is one, financial obviously is another, industrial, which increased in terms of the share of breaches year over year. Industrial systems, OT, etc., are seeing a large increase in breach, and that's one where we have found out that considerable amount of time is being spent by us, especially in talking to clients in the industrial space. Healthcare has always been targeted because of the amount of the kind of data, right? Patient records and information about people, etc., that can be exposed. Obviously, financial has always been there. So these three, I would say, are the top sectors that are being breached. So that's one key point to note. If you want to scroll forward.
Actually, I think that was the last of
but yeah,
go ahead.
In summary, it's important to know that the cost absolutely is a real thing. There is an increase in breach and the cost. There is savings for those that are adopting new technologies to address those remediations, i.e. generative AI. And then dovetailing this back to what is important for this panel, right, and what you do for a living is security awareness.
Yeah.
How can we basically make people, organizations, clients, anybody aware of what is important for them to consider in terms of where to look, where to remediate, where to address within their organization so that they can get ahead of the game. And I guess that's what we're going to talk as a panel, right? So
yeah. Well, thanks very much, Sanju, and feel free to chime in. You know, our protocol here is typically if you can raise your hand when you have something to say, then we'll go around the panel that way. And I guess at this point, I would like to ask any of the other panelists, Ryan or Thea or Aaron, if you have any general thoughts on the report and the context that it has for, you know, the security awareness and human risk management industry. So Thea, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I do. Hello. So I was I always rely on DBIR actually quite a lot, probably more than other industry reports, because I find that they're more transparent about where they get their numbers from. So there's a lot of reports that report a lot of numbers, but they don't tell you like we've calculated this from X, Y, and Z. So really, you're just relying on pure faith of the experts that are giving you the numbers rather than. So I really, really appreciate that. And I noticed that the security awareness, in regards to security awareness, the percentage of incidents that have been attributed to human error has significantly reduced in this report to what is typically reported, so anywhere between sort of 84 and 95%. In this particular report now, it's down to 68%. Apparently, of incidents, according to the DBIR 2024, are attributed to human error. So I was like obviously quite landed by that because normally I see numbers sort of way up there. And I went and I really appreciate that the explanation that was given, which was that the reason why this is reduced so much is because they have removed privilege misuse as a human error factor. Which is kind of arguable, but also the reason the report says that it did that is because it wanted to provide a clearer metric of what security awareness can actually influence, which I think is incredibly valid. But my question is that then statistic actually a measure of what security awareness can affect rather than human error?
Interesting.
So I'm just wondering if that's what people's thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about that one. Aaron, did you have any thoughts?
If you haven't had a chance to read it, it is a very, very interesting read. And I think one of the most interesting pieces that I pulled out of it was the type of data that's pulled out and targeted by attackers, or sometimes just gathered by attackers, is the shadow data. And I think about that because one of the most important things we talk about, especially when we're onboarding new employees, is understanding what data you have access to, and understanding that as the first part in learning how to protect it. So I think that was one of the most interesting things that I pulled out of that report so far.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think these reports are fantastic, especially, you know, what IBM has done is just breaking it down so you can kind of compartmentalize it, understand it. Then you have to take that information to, you know, your teams and say, like, look, this is happening. This is real. This is, you know, what we need to pay attention to. Then you can hopefully build more targeted training programs, et cetera, around that. And it can be a part of your culture. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be like a report card. It could just be a learning tool. So it's just how you look at it. So I think it's like a great place to have reports like this, and, you know, to be able to use them as tools and building blocks for programs like security awareness and human risk management.
Yeah, Sanju.
Yeah, I think Thea and Aaron, both of you touched base upon some very important points. One, for example, Thea's point about the statistics and how or what it is actually pointing to. One of the things that we're calling out in the report is how stolen data and access to stolen credentials has actually spiked over the past year and is causing the breaches, right? So on one hand, all of the awareness sessions and the trainings and everything that we are actually providing to our employees and to anybody within our organization is becoming useful. So that is actually causing lesser human errors, or actually, or at least the fact that there's awareness around it. People are taking that to heart. They are they're using the awareness as a means of, hey, I heard about this. I think I saw this in the training. I should not click on this link. That is working to a certain extent. But now the attackers are going a different route. They're actually becoming you. So you don't have to do anything incorrectly. They're actually taking your credentials, stealing it, and actually logging in as yourself. That's where I think we're seeing a difference in the way attackers are behaving and breaches are happening. So,
and now they're using deep fake videos and deep fake audio to impersonate people to do that as well. And that it raised an interesting question, in my mind there as you were speaking. So if someone impersonates someone and fools someone, is that then human error? Is getting tricked by AI or another person stealing credentials human error or not? Or is that simply like the new way that we have to be prepared and look at these things? That humans are making less errors, but the attack vectors are becoming more sophisticated.
Exactly. And there comes the advent of generative AI, right? And how AI can have impact on security and how security can have an impact on AI. So both of these things are to be talked about and discussed. Before I hand it over, I also wanted to just touch base upon one point from Aaron about shadow data and the fact that data and understanding data where it is and where it resides is going to be crucial in managing what to remediate and where to remediate. Because if you don't know where your data is, what are you trying to secure and how will you secure? So that's going to be absolutely paramount as well for organizations when they begin or continue the journey.
Yeah, really good point. And I think I also wanted to just follow up a little bit on one of the points that Sanju made. And it's something that I've actually seen within client organizations where management has actually grabbed onto one of those little anecdote or the little names that we give to things. And one of the mottos that I've heard security managers say is, and this reflects the data and insights we're getting, is that attackers don't break in, they log in. And that was specifically in one of the charts, in this report. I'm sure it's not the first time it's been referenced, but I think having those little memorable sayings that you can pass on, it's almost like a meme, right? That people start to remember. And it is important that people realize it's not so much the IT team's responsibility to protect them, the organization, from being logged in all the time or being broken into all the time. It is how we treat our passwords and authentication and our data. So just wanted to highlight that. Thanks. Aaron.
Well, I was just going to build off of a couple different things. Is that I understand that phishing is obviously still one of the biggest factors causing data breaches and lost credentials. But it is interesting to think about how we will start having to reshape a security awareness program, because although phishing, I will say for most people, obviously not for us, is a large part of like your training program. And it should stay that way because phishing has stayed at the top for a very long time. But it's going to be interesting to see what technology can start to combat AI. There's the argument that only AI is going to stop AI. So it's going to be interesting to see, aside from a human risk program, what technology is going to come about, what different tools are we going to have to see that someone isn't logging in as the correct person. But it's also something to think about how our actual programs are going to change. So focusing more on data and where that data is stored and making sure that we have a good understanding. How do we test our employees on something like that? But the bigger thing I wanted to say was the time it takes to remediate a data breach is wildly long. And I think from an awareness perspective, considering how we train our employees to understand the what, why, and how to report things is almost more important than just, oh, I didn't click a link. Well, what if something really happens? What if something's suspicious? What if you think someone did log into your account and you're seeing something that's just off? How are we training our employees on those little red flags instead of just phishing? I mean, we have a ton of technology in place to stop phishing attacks from happening. If they're getting through at this point, you know, I'm sure they're a higher level of sophistication, and we can't blame people for that. But how are we creating an environment that allows employees to feel comfortable to come to us fast so that we can cut down on that time and cut down on the cost of a breach?
Yeah, the timing is really important. Thea?
Yeah, just on the back actually of what Erin has just said, is that I feel like one of the issues that we have, particularly in reporting, is using the phrase human error. Because actually, if you put them together, error implies you've made a mistake. So you should have done this, but you did this instead. And actually, if you were ignorant of what you should have done, it wasn't really an error. That wasn't really your fault, right? And also, as has been pointing out very, very beautifully by this report, is that we're often blaming victims for actions that were taken by human attackers. And that's what the report has done. It said this isn't the fault of the victim in this scenario. This is the fault of somebody hijacking a victim's credentials. It's still human caused, though. I mean, from the alternate perspective. And we do actually have a lot of varied causes for why humans cause breaches. Sometimes it's not human error. Sometimes it's very intentional, right? So we've got insider threat. They're actually going in. That's not a mistake. That's an intention. And so I do think also we need to split up a little bit how we talk about different kinds of human error as we currently define it from both sides of that field attacker and a defender.
Yeah, I think if people didn't feel that they were so, at blame for their role in a security incident, they may be more prone to report it, may be more prone to learn about it, may be more prone to just be positive about it rather than that, oh, I don't want to be the one that's responsible, right? Well, yeah, if you get duped by a super awesome AI video, like, good on them. I mean, come on. Like we are all watching commercials every day and falling for it. And how much AI we've probably seen that we don't know about. We're security professionals. It's a human problem. I think we need to look at it a little differently. So it's a great point. And also just on the back of one of Erin's comments about how long it takes to remediate a data breach. The famous one that came to mind, Home Depot in 2014. 10 years later, they're still dealing with that problem with their customers. And it took them until 2020 to just deal with that in the court system, right? So, I mean, it's not like this just goes away next week. This is the rest of your life potentially as an organization after you face one of these massive breaches.
Sanju, you had one last point and we'll move on to the polls.
Sure, yeah, to the point about being able to come up and speak about it and be open about what you're seeing in your environment, I think it's important to know that the report calls out that those teams or organizations that involved law enforcement, right, after they were breached, they saw a significant reduction in savings, right, or improvement in terms of how much they were going to spend overall.
And the time, right, that it took for solving or
exactly. So that meant that more and more companies are willing to talk about it and be open about it and pull in people, right? Pull in, managed service providers or companies that are specialized in dealing with this to help them and get to end a job. Yeah.
All right. Great. Just give me a second here. I'm going to now launch the poll, the first poll. And so if people can just take a moment, and while you're doing that, I will go back to our presentation and move on with our open questions. So let me just grab this here. Okay. So the first open question is, what are the observations from the report that provide the most value for security awareness programs. And we've kind of touched a little bit on that as we went around the table the first time. But if you're a security awareness manager joining us, for the first time on this session and wondering, what can the report help you with? What are the types of information you actually want to make use of from here? It sort of goes to the poll that I'll be asking in a minute around what types of things you're going to be able to do with the report. So anybody have any thoughts just before we move on to sort of focus in on what parts of this report will actually benefit the managers that are here? Sanju?
Yeah, I think, like I said, identity and access management is going to be very key. We talked about that. Data security, and I think we're going to talk about that in detail. But data security, we talked about that, and making sure that the awareness programs they should never stop. We need to tweak them. We need to gear them up for advanced breaches that cover all these things that we talked about, the advent of Gen AI and how AI can impact security and vice versa, right? So I think these are some of the key takeaways.
Excellent. Yeah, I think those are good points. Definitely hope people will sort of make note of those. Aaron?
I was just going to say too, everyone is going to be able to pick something different out of this report that's going to be relevant to them. But what I would say, if you are a newer security awareness manager and you are struggling to connect with other people in the security organization, like identity and access management, any teams that work with data, the SOC, this is good leverage for you to use to say, hey, these are the different areas that are going to affect, how I refine this program. So use this as leverage to have those conversations with the other team to try to gather data to understand now where we can start to do some targeted training or tailored training, and have different conversations with people. So that's all I was going to say on it. Use it. Use it as leverage.
I think it's great. People will take what insights they may get from it, but first thing is you have to read it and you have to focus on the things that you think are relevant for your organization. Thea?
Yeah, so one of the things that we definitely leverage at where I work is trying to alert people to the fact that this can cost you your company, and this can cost everybody in the company their job. And you look at the kind of impact of this. But sometimes when you say to small and medium businesses that the average cost of a breach is $4.8 million, they become sort of disassociated from that because that number to them is so outrageous that they almost don't affiliate themselves with it. So I just wondered if we're talking about averages, when we're looking at the scale of the average, like what is better when you're talking to small and medium-sized businesses, when you're trying to say to them, look, this is the risk, handing them a number that's so out of scope, particularly in European organizations rather than American organizations, it can actually almost dissociate them from the issue. So I was just wondering if somebody had some particularly any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was going to ask Sanju,
useful, or it's
based on that, does the report not have a breakdown by organization size? I think it used to. Yeah.
It does have, it does state what is the size of the organization. I can't recall the number, but
because a $4 million loss for the small businesses is, as Thea says, almost unfathomable. So you do have to get those things in context.
Right. So I think it's important to note that, when we talk about cybersecurity, regardless of the size of the organization, the issue is prevalent. I can say countless examples where if you are a small and medium-sized business owner, you may be handling few computer systems that handle external people's data. If it's unattended, it can be stolen, and creating that awareness from the ground up is going to be absolutely paramount. I agree that some of these numbers might throw them off, that okay, I don't deal with that kind of numbers in my revenue, or my revenue doesn't support making the business case. But it's contextualizing the problem for them within the sector or business that they work in, and connecting that to real data loss for their clients and how that can impact their business, right? So that is an area that absolutely needs a lot more, I would say, focus, especially in the small and medium-sized businesses. So completely agree.
Excellent. Okay. I'm going to launch a second poll question, which is, do you think this report's statistics provide insights that you'd like to share directly with your employees? So sometimes it does help in some of the ways that Thea and Aaron mentioned, to be able to actually use specific data. We often like to, we'd prefer to have stories that are relevant, that you will engage people with. Sometimes just a quick statistic will actually provide some good insight too, but it always is better if there's some context behind it around how relevant that statistic is for the organization. So love to get people's insights on that from the point of view of this poll. And moving on to the next open question for the panel, how can you determine the relevance of data for your organization? So we did sort of touch on this, but digging down, have you seen any examples of where specific data has been taken and used for a particular organization and to put it in context? I'm going to call on somebody if you don't raise your hand soon. Aaron sometimes has stories about this kind of thing.
What's interesting is that talking about sharing some of these data points with your organization, I will be screenshotting page 23, which does put employee training at the top, as Theo was pointing out, as one of the best remediating factors.
Yeah.
So in case anyone has a question on the relevance of employee training and awareness, I will be selfishly using that data point myself.
Yeah.
But as far as how do you determine the relevance of, Ryan, it's my favorite answer. It depends on your organization, as it always does. Everything in this report can be relevant, but it depends on what your organization needs. Phishing is less relevant for me. We talk in Slack, but it is relevant for maybe our sales teams that are, external facing.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's really important to read it and realize where you kind of see yourself in this report. Like I see Fastly really taking a new approach to credentials. We have multi-factor authentication, but really emphasizing that point that this is one of the it's in the top 2 causes for, data loss. And our data is valuable. That's why people target different organizations, is information gain.
Cool. Yeah, Thea?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's really based on your organization. And I think because the variances between different organizations, industries, organization size, organization structure, and so on, you have to put any of this information that comes in has to be filtered to what is relevant for you. And I don't think there is no one organization on earth that is capable of providing that for everybody in a singular report. So sort of in a vast utopia, of course, we'd have individual reports for different types of organizations, but this is not actually realistic. So, and also aimed on your goals, and also looking at trying to utilize the data in this report for making a business case for why you need money, because this can happen to you, and here's some evidence for it happening to other people. So many other people, actually. You can look at the amount of data points that are used sometimes in these calculations, and you're looking at thousands of data points. This is not small change. This absolutely can happen to you. So I think using it as relevance for a business case, but again, using it with a filter that allows you to not make it seem like you're hyperboling this as if it's not relevant for us. It is, but just within your space. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not relevant because you don't recognize that number, for example.
Yeah, excellent point. Sanju?
I'm gonna take this from the context of how or what kind of data is within your organization and how that has changed over the years, especially with the advent of new technology and Gen AI, and how that is important for you to count and or consider while you're putting in programs and processes to address data breaches, right? So with the advent of Gen AI, a lot of companies are using models that, like, for example, ChatGPT or different versions of those large language models in order to train their AI program and get to a specific outcome. One of the challenges with that is the data that you're probably pulling in is from external sources, or the data at that you don't know whether you can count on that data. So it's very important when you to look at your organization's data through the lens of what kind of data is coming in, especially with these new technologies. How is that coupling with the data that you already have within your organization? Now you have a new set of data that you need to protect, which you don't even know whether that is can be trusted. You don't know where it's coming from, and how do you make sure that you identify what data that is, what combination of data it is, and where it is. So that's absolutely important to be looking at, right? That aspect of data is important when you look at what to secure, where to secure, with Gen AI coming into the mix. So it's a different perspective to think about within data security. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to launch one last poll, and pardon me, there's probably an extra untitled question that will be there too, but please ignore it. But the poll question is, in what ways do you expect the insights from this report will actually impact your organization? So just let me share my screen here. And I added one, I kind of missed it earlier on. Thanks, Aaron, for, oops, I think I'm probably sharing my screen here. It happens once in a while, right? Let's see if we can get back to that. PowerPoint only. There we are. Thanks, Aaron, for mentioning, I didn't get it updated on the slide here, but building a business case is obviously one of them. So I added that just now into the poll, and at the same time somehow created an untitled question that I couldn't delete. So in what ways do you expect the insights from this report will help your security program or influence your program? It could be providing more data points. Actually, it is there for a business case in support of HRM initiatives. Identification of focus areas for your program, identification of tools or techniques, and even choosing KPIs. You know, if you'd like to be able to understand how your organization is doing relative to others, it's nice to look at data that's published for others that may or may not be relevant to you. We go back to that question of relevance. But anyway, those are things that I think would be interesting for us to understand, you know, how that data might be used within your organization. But let's go back to the KPI question and say, you know, what can be done to use this data from a planning and KPI point of view? Are there things in this report that do help you decide, you know what, I might aim for a certain type of outcome, and to do that, maybe we have to do certain initiatives or invest in certain things. Anybody have insights? Oh, it's a tie for who put up their hand first. I'm going to go to Ryan. He hasn't spoken a lot this session.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much excellent knowledge going on the panel today. It's been awesome to listen to. But I was just going to say, you know, you can use it as much or as little as you want. But the best part about it, I think we've mentioned it, it's public data. It's a third party, so it is a benchmark that you can put yourself against. So I think, you know, if you're a small business, you might not be, you know, trying to hit all those, you know, KPIs that are lined out there. But if you're a major organization and you have a serious security culture and you want to actually, you know, have a standard, well, here it is. This is the industry standard. This is where everyone else is falling. So it does give you, I think, something to measure. It gives you something to ask for money for some of these points, you know, and it gives you some ammunition to walk in and say, no, security needs to be at the forefront. This is where we are against the industry. We need to be here, and how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, well put. Aaron.
Love the benchmarking idea. I was gonna say too, though, going back to a point I think I had made earlier is, reporting is one of your most important metrics when it comes to anything, not just phishing, not just simulations, but reporting anything that kind of feels off. So if you have some way to work with the SOC, or you have some way to work with your incident management team to understand, how is the time coming down from first report to end of remediation, or from incident start to report time? Is there some way to track that and see how you might be able to get that down to build that security culture up? I don't have a perfect answer for it, but in theory, it sounds great. But I think that's something to really think about, is time is money. Time is key here. So cutting down that time is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, excellent point. Actually, I want to go back to a comment that Gabriel made in the chat, which was, it was back to the point about, is the millions of dollars in cost of a data breach relevant for smaller businesses? That could actually be translated into a percentage of revenue as a potential proxy. And in that sense, you might actually have a benchmark to work from there, for example, to say, how much, and to do that, you actually have to be able to measure your costs, and, you may have to, assume that it's measurable over a short period of time, where we've talked about it's possible that it may take years, to calculate the total costs for these things. But it's an interesting perspective from Gabriel, just to say, we could look at things from a percentage of revenue point of view rather than the absolute dollars. Thea.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I just suggestion it's more useful to report that for people, but it depends what the report is for. It's also very useful to know what is the average cost of a data breach. That is important. But maybe also reporting what is the average percentage of loss for yearly business income.
Yeah, you should be able to
pretty
calculate
beneficial,
losses, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to have a load of security professionals having to get the calculator out and sort of try and organize that themselves.
Yeah, Sanju.
It is one thing to have remediation actions, processes and procedures to address, issues within your organization, or whatever you have found needs to be plugged and closed. But it's equally important to make sure that you define how you're going to respond to an incident if it were to happen. So you may think that you've done all the awareness sessions, you've made you plugged your holes in terms of data, or increased your identity and access approaches, and multi-factor authentication is working great. That's all great, but at some point, attackers are going to find new ways to breach. And if a breach happens, how are you going to respond? So putting some measures around those, identifying and kind of quantifying, right? Okay, I've documented my procedures, but now what do I do with it? Have you done a tabletop? Have you done a simulation to ensure what you will do if you get called by law enforcement or somebody externally asking you for a ransom? So, putting stress testing your environment and making sure that you're ready to respond to a breach, and quantifying that and putting some KPIs around those, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, I think a very good point around the practice as well, like the tabletop and the incident response and all that. Again, you can talk about all these things, but what happens if it happens to you? Are you prepared for that? Are you going to freak out and run out of the building with your hands up, or are you going to take the proper steps and make sure you come out on top on this one? So great points.
Yeah, and Galen asked a question just around the date of issue of the report. It says it's 2024 report. We're barely halfway through the year, so I just wondered what was the actual date that the data was kind of taken as a snapshot?
It's March 2023 to February 2024.
Okay, great.
So that's how the cycle goes.
Excellent. One more question, just off the top of my head. I know, Sanju, you've mentioned a couple of times the use of AI. We're going to actually have a session coming up that Ryan will host in a couple of weeks, just to give a little sneak preview around AI in our area of expertise here. But I wondered if you have any insights in particular, things that you've seen on the AI side that you feel, would be particularly relevant for people to look at more closely.
Yeah, so I think people sometimes misconstrue or have this whole, deja vu moment when we talk about AI. How they think it's something totally out of the world. What do I do? I don't know what to do, etc. You gotta look at AI as just about how we go ahead and do our business on a day-to-day basis. Identity is important when you talk about AI. Data security is important when you talk about AI. Making sure that people are aware of where the data resides is important when you talk about what kind of data is being infused into your AI programs, right? Your large language model. So traversing that journey of how your organization is using AI from the get-go, where it's being used, for what purpose it's being used, and what outcome it is actually generating for you, and looking at each path within that journey and securing the key points around AI is important. So we basically say, you got to secure your data, you got to secure your model, and you got to secure your usage of the data, right? And the infrastructure. Those are the key things that you need to basically look at when you talk about AI. So securing AI is basically those things. So it's a vast area, but it's easy to break it down if you look at it in the simplest of ways.
Right. So yeah, I mean, the way I look at it too is there's two perspectives. You can look at it from, as you were describing, how you secure the use of AI, but also how can you use AI to do more or higher quality security work, and so that came out in some of our polls, I think, as well. So it's a really good discussion. I'm going to actually now go to our poll results before we wrap up, and so let's just see what we've got for poll question number 1. Can you guys see that? There we go. Do you think the focus of the report on leveraging AI and advanced automation reflects increased likelihood your organization will invest more in these areas? By far, everybody says yes, which is, I think, good. So that will be leveraging the AI. And then question number 2 is, do you think this report's statistics provide insights that you'll be likely to share with your organization directly? Everybody said yes. That's great. And finally, what ways do you think the insights will have an influence on your security programs? So one is more data points for business case, identification of tools, and then identification. Do I have 2? Focus areas for your programs and tools for your programs. And then a little lower down was KPIs. And another option I added by mistake was for building a business case. So there's a lot of support for building business cases from these reports. Any comments or insights on the poll results that we got today? All right. Don't see anything. Yeah.
I think it's really important. It is a really important report because I think it is one of the leading struggles that people in cybersecurity have is creating business cases, or at least trying to attribute cybersecurity to being something that's involved in business, not something that's necessarily against business. They're always seen as kind of competitive, so anything you take away from the other budget for cybersecurity is almost seen as almost wasted, or it's an extra thing that they have to do. And in fact, it's actually there to protect business so that you can have business tomorrow. And I think that it really highlights that in a way, in a numbers way, that a lot of C-suite and executives and board members are able to actually comprehend. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is a great segue to our wrap-up slide, where we usually like to kind of call out some of the highlights from what we've covered, specifically for executives. I think the whole idea of building a business case totally resonates there. Where we can take the relevant data from the report and use that to justify investment in the areas where we can show that there are gaps. On the implementation side, I think it's around the tools and how we're actually going to use some of these tools to, maybe accelerate or provide more interesting and relevant insights for people on a daily basis as we share content within our awareness programs and communicate with other functional areas. On the individual side, maybe not. So that's kind of more for B2C sort of application of our sessions, but really appreciate everybody providing their insights and the audience Q&A as well. So need to just pay a couple of bills. So I just wanted to mention, in a bit of a similar context, the sessions here are brought to you by ClickArmor, which is a gamified security awareness training platform that it can be used for a lot of important areas to strengthen the foundational training for employees before you actually start testing them or before you put them out in the real world. And a lot of times, taking these insights from reports, we've actually done this within some of our modules where we share, statistics, and we just in a fun way present them and say, how much do you think was lost due to cybercrime? You could put these in any kind of question. It could be relevant or scoped down to your own organization. What are the costs of doing these things? And then providing feedback in a fun way and gamifying it. So that's the way we tend to use that. And the visually dynamic aspect of ClickArmor is what really grabs people's attention, providing the feedback interactively, keeps them engaged, and then being able to keep this content up to date and modify it as needed as emerging threats come through. So we'd love to have a chance to share a demo with you guys if anybody's interested in exploring a new and exciting way to do security awareness training. And I'm going to just turn it over to Ryan to describe, typically how you can engage with us.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Scott. Just I wanted to highlight three quick start bundles that we do have currently right now. So perfect of organizations of all sizes. As low as $500, you can get 25 people, unlimited access to the ClickArmor platform for a year. We can go up from there. We can set up, obviously custom environments of all sizes as well. We're completely scalable. Cool thing is you'll actually be able to start buying these packages hopefully almost as of tomorrow when we launch our new clickarmor.ca website as well. So stay tuned for that. And if you follow our newsletters, and as always, thank you for joining us today. It was great to have everyone and great conversations.
Absolutely. And as we prepare for the next session, unfortunately, I won't be here, but Ryan will be the capable host for, and so I expect, lots of panelists will help him out going forward, but he's very well adept at managing these. But our next session, number 49, if you can believe it, been doing this for 49 sessions, over 2 years, is going to be on leveraging AI to manage security awareness training and human risk management programs. So there are some things that we've seen in working with our customers and insights that we think that could be useful, lessons learned and things like that, on how you can use AI tools to better manage and deploy your awareness and human risk management programs. So hope to see everybody here joining Ryan on the 18th of September at 1 p.m. Eastern. So with that, I will just tell everybody, as I usually say, engaged employees reduce risk. So we'll see you all next time.